Your organization has a problem. You have employees working from home, employees working at the office, and now employees who work at both locations. How do you set up your employees for success in this type of situation? How do you troubleshoot issues? Most importantly, how do you secure users' identities, data transmissions, and their computers? My name is Robert McMillen. I'm a college professor in information systems and a Microsoft certified trainer. I have over 20 years experience working in information technology, and I have been a part of all these different scenarios. I consulted with hundreds of companies on how to solve these problems and keep staff productive and secure. In this course, I'll review how to create a plan for your hybrid workforce. I'll discuss the risks and rewards of this new dynamic. I'll also discuss how to secure and use VPN, Wi-Fi, mobile devices, and more. Does your IT staff know how to set up a hybrid office? What about the equipment needed for communication? I'll discuss all these issues and more in this hybrid security course. The new world we live in today isn't the one we had just a few years ago. We've had remote workers connecting to the office since the 1990s, but this was always a small group of typically very mobile people. We used to call them road warriors, but now we have a new reality. In some cases, over 90% of a company's workforce could be remote permanently. That's going to require some new training and out-of-the-box thinking. In order to understand this new business strategy, we need to look at three types of workforces you can come to expect in the coming years. The first type of workforce to consider would be the co-located group. Although it sounds like this group would be located in multiple venues, they're actually just traditional work at the office groups. They will likely communicate using email, phone, video conferencing with workers, clients, and stakeholders who are remote to their office. The next group would be the remote workforce. These workers are 100% remote, with the occasional need to come in for annual or quarterly meetings. They could be constant or infrequent travelers, or work completely from their home office. The last workforce type would be the hybrid workforce. This workforce works out of their home office as well as the company's facilities. This is likely going to be the most common, largest, and newest workforce for most organizations. They'll work from both locations depending on the need to meet with staff or clients, and they'll need to be quite mobile and may require an office in both locations. This is going to create some interesting challenges for the data security team. You'll need to devise a strategy that not only allows remote and hybrid workers to be able to seamlessly access data, but they'll need to do it in a secure manner. Having secure data is only the beginning, however, because much of this can be circumvented by the user without proper training when confronted with socially engineered attacks. This has been known to happen with spoofed emails from colleagues, phone calls from supposed employees, and Internet of Things hacking of low security devices, such as cameras and Bluetooth, to attain sensitive information. The IT staff will have their hands full and will always need to stay focused in our world of electronic data piracy. As a leader in your company, you'll need to continue to constantly train, constantly update, and always stay vigilant. According to a report from Tessian.com, 3 out of 4 workers say they believe the future will be working in either a remote or hybrid environment. They say that most workers wouldn't want to work for a company that doesn't offer hybrid as an option. By not offering hybrid solutions, your company could be at risk of not being able to find the most qualified people to fill your open positions. Let's say that you have chosen a hybrid workforce for your company. What are your risks? I remember a few years ago, an accounting company executive came to my consulting practice and said they had a laptop stolen with client data on it. They were pretty sure the data was encrypted according to their IT staff, but they came to me to confirm it. I took the hard drive out of the computer and placed it in another computer, and I was able to see that data unencrypted. All the color drained from his face. He knew the state laws requiring companies to inform clients when their data was stolen. He went back to his office, fired his IT staff, and sent a letter to all of their clients. This was a multi-million-dollar accounting firm. Within 1 year, they lost so much business, they sold to a competitor for a fraction of their previous value. The risks are real enough when you have computers that don't leave the office, but when they do, the risks can be many times more. So what can you do to protect your company from a lost or stolen device? Data encryption done properly is a big step towards protection, especially from laptops and other devices that are lost or stolen. You can take advantage of your TPM chip. This stands for Trusted Platform Module, and it encrypts your data to a chip on the motherboard using software built into the operating system for free. When your data is verifiably encrypted, you don't need to contact clients in most states when that data is lost or stolen. You can also add in a proximity detector for remote workers. When a laptop or other device moves further away than a few feet from the user, the screen automatically locks. This can keep data from being stolen from unlocked computers that may have been left open on trains, buses, and coffee shops. Now, there are many more risks to remote and hybrid workers, but the first step is making a plan to encrypt your data and train your staff. This can go a long way to protecting your company's data. In order to set up your company's security plan, there are some do's and don'ts. Remember, we are working with people, and people make mistakes. People don't want to feel like they're being spoken down to or overly controlled. Let's start with the do's. Do create a group in your organization to meet on a regular basis to discuss data risks. You can bring in outside consultants and state officials to explain what can and should be done to protect your data in a legal and responsible manner. Do educate your staff by having them do a video review and short test on an annual basis to keep them sharp and on the lookout for scams and phishing attempts. You can add them to the list of your compliance videos, such as sexual harassment and treating others equally. You can also send out test phishing emails to see who opens them. Do create a chain of command that is ready to deal with security breaches for hybrid staff. Once staff realize they have been compromised or are no longer in possession of company equipment, the staff should know who to inform and what steps they should take, such as calling police, informing clients, resetting all user passwords, and anything else that may be required. Make sure they know they will not be punished, or the staff may not inform the company in a timely manner or at all. Do provide necessary tools and connectivity. For instance, provide devices that allow for multi-factor authentication, device tracking, and encryption. Give them a secure way to connect to the company using an encrypted stream, such as a virtual private network or certificate-based authentication. Now for the don'ts. Don't allow users to have administrator access to their devices. That may allow them too many rights that could introduce malware. Don't allow any unapproved applications to be installed on their devices. For Windows computers, you can use group policy, but for mobile devices, you can sign up for cloud products like Microsoft Endpoint Manager that not only protects and encrypts mobile devices, but can also separate work from personal applications for bring your own device scenarios. Don't allow users to connect to open or public Wi-Fi connections. Man-in-the-middle attacks can steal data as it travels from their computer to the office, even if you're using VPN. They do this by creating a fake access point that users connect to, and the data is taken before the encryption portion of the stream is even formed. Most users have smartphones that have tethering capabilities that they should use instead of the open or public options. Do make a plan and stick to it. Don't let the plan become outdated, and you'll be able to have a successful and secure hybrid workforce. In a hybrid environment, users need to be able to seamlessly connect to the data for their company without too many obstacles. But the connections need to be done securely. You can consider many options for how they should connect. The first may be a traditional VPN. This has been around for a very long time. I remember setting up my first VPN connections in 1999. It was installed on floppy disks and took many steps to get it to work. VPN setup has come a long way since then, and the security has increased over the years as well. Of all the VPN options out there, SSL VPN is likely the best option for Windows users, and L2TP using a certificate is best for Apple Macintosh. There are others, but they all seem to have issues. Point-to-point tunneling VPN, as an example, is no longer considered secure. Another one would be IKEv2. This is typically being blocked by many hotel VPNs, and since it uses IPsec for the protocol, it can be very slow. Web-based VPN is another option, as it can connect to basically any desktop operating system. You log into a website, such as Cisco's VPN Anywhere, and gain access to files through the site. It doesn't offer full VPN like an SSL client would, however. You don't have internal access to use remote desktop in many cases. It's mainly used just for file access. Remote desktop application and web configuration using a Windows server can also be very useful for hybrid users. They connect using an encrypted stream tied to a certificate, and it isn't usually blocked by hotels or restaurants. And it's lightweight, so it can be used by staff with slow connections, and it can additionally be secured using SSL or other type of VPN if desired. This works using Citrix Remote Desktop as well. Both options also come with a web GUI if needed that only opens approved applications instead of an entire remote desktop. I remember many years ago, a call center hired prison inmates on work release to sell a satellite TV service. They didn't properly lock down the remote desktop, so every day around 2 p.m., the prison staff would shut down the server so they could take a few hours break before the prison bus came to pick them up for the night. The owner was desperate to find a solution. I came in with my team and we locked down their access by using the web GUI option that only allowed them to open a couple of mission critical applications with no direct server access. After that, the company was able to do business again. Don't be afraid to bring in a security consultant, even if you have an IT team. Security experts can focus on what your hybrid staff needs to stay secure in today's environment. Many companies have decided to stick with on-premises servers and applications for now, but there are many cloud-only or hybrid configurations companies are using that include cloud products and services for their staff data needs. How does the security plan change when using cloud? Well, not as much as you might think. You still need to secure your users' computers and devices the same way using encryption, multi-factor authentication, and an encrypted stream for data communication. It will just connect to a different location. You may also choose to use VPN to Office and then connect to the cloud using the connection from the Office to the cloud. This allows for better IT controls to be put in place and more traditional Active Directory and group policies to continue to be in use. The connection from the Office to the cloud can be a VPN tunnel or a direct connection using lockdown IP configurations. It is inevitable that many companies will use the cloud one day for email, data storage, backup, artificial intelligence, virtual machines, and more. There's internet as a service, software as a service, storage as a service, and many more services. The risk to cloud is higher than on-premises for the IT department because the IT staff have little control over data breaches and mitigation as they would for on-premises. Plus, the cost is much higher than on-premises in most cases. For large companies, cloud just doesn't make good financial sense, but for small companies, it may. IT staff and consultants may cost more than the servers and applications they use, so moving them to the cloud and eliminating IT staff costs may make good sense, but think about what you're giving up. You're no longer in control. Now, that may be what you want after all, since your company may not understand the control you need. But investing in good quality IT staff and consultants will more than pay for themselves the first time your company data has been compromised and you don't know what to do to get your data back. Cloud is great for many things, but don't use it as an excuse to save money if you end up losing your company by not properly securing your data and devices. One good investment in cloud may be backups. This gives you an additional fallback position from a ransomware attack. Email is also a good idea for smaller companies since Microsoft has pulled Exchange from the small business versions and has raised the price for an Exchange server license. There will be other cloud options that may be a good idea for smaller companies, but be sure to get good advice before moving your data into the cloud and connecting your users to cloud services. Virtual private networks encrypt data from a user's computer to the office or cloud resources. I had an experience with a client that allowed many users to connect using VPN to their large distribution office. This worked fine for a while, but when one staff member allowed their child to install a game on one of the company laptops, it introduced malware that went directly from the laptop into the corporate network, which took the entire network down. It took 3 days for my team to root out all the malware and get them back up and running. And it cost the company over $1 million a day to be out of business. They could have easily invested a few $1,000s to properly secure their network to avoid this from happening. So what did they do wrong and how do you avoid it? The staff had administrator access to their computers. This allowed malware to be introduced when the user allowed a non-compliant application to be installed. You can use Windows App Locker or some other utility to keep this from happening. If you do need to give users some admin access, App Locker allows only approved applications to be installed by the user. System Center Configuration Manager and Group Policy can also be used to install approved applications and updates from Microsoft and third-party vendors. You can also lock down VPN access to only specific computers the staff needs instead of the entire network. This can be done in the VPN server or concentrator or by segmenting networks into virtual local area networks known as VLANs. In cloud offerings, this is referred to as software-defined networking because routing is done using software configurations instead of hardware devices. VPNs can be further protected using multi-factor authentication. This means that you offer them more than just a username and password. A code can be sent to a cell phone or an application can be installed on a smartphone that can use a fingerprint reader or other authentication mechanism to allow the user access that is more secure than traditional usernames and passwords. When choosing a VPN type, be sure to use one based on a certificate, such as SSL VPN or Layer 2 tunneling protocol. A public certificate will verify the user and the location to log into. Make sure the user is accessing company data through trusted internet locations. Public or open Wi-Fi is not to be used or trusted due to many vulnerabilities. Be sure to have the latest anti-malware signatures installed on the user's devices and control those devices using a mobile device and mobile application management service, such as Microsoft Intune or Endpoint Manager. Virtual private network connections are great ways to send and receive encrypted data across trusted networks. Be sure to use these and other security methods to keep your users and computers safe. Malware can sneak into corporate networks in ways you may not even imagine. I consulted with a radio station that called and said their entire network was down due to some sort of malware attack, but they couldn't figure out where it came from. I isolated different segments of the network until I found the area from which it originated. It turned out only one computer was infected, but that one computer was blasting out so many packets as it was trying to infect all the other computers that it created a denial of service attack. This means it filled up the network streams with data so everything else was choked out. So where did this malware originate? One of the sales team members had purchased a new digital recorder. He plugged it into his computer USB port, and of course he didn't realize the recorder came from a foreign factory full of malware just waiting to be released. As soon as I unplugged the recorder, the entire network came back up. Stopping malware is a difficult practice for hybrid workers, unless you have someone always on site watching for issues, but you can lock down your remote workers much better than you might think. Your first defense is knowledge. Train your employees to not open email from people they don't know. This will require training and a very good spam filter. You can filter your email through your online email service or by a third-party company for on-premises email. This will take out the majority of phishing attacks, but not all of them. The next big delivery of malware comes from web browsing. Use a proxy service either online or on premises to keep users away from infected sites. OpenDNS from Cisco is fairly inexpensive and easy to set up. Users will be warned if they go to unapproved or infected sites and will block them from visiting. Of course, having an anti-malware software program that's up to date is imperative. I won't suggest any particular programs, but usually the paid software is superior in testing and detection than the free software. And be sure to regularly update your user's operating system. Force remote workers to browse through the company. This is known as a direct or forced tunnel when using VPN. A split tunnel allows web browsing directly to the internet, but a forced tunnel will take them through the company, where proxies and other protections will keep them and the company safe. Lock down USB ports through group policies or third-party security applications, such as anti-malware. Only allow approved keyboards and mice or other approved devices to connect. This will keep out infected devices. Keeping out malware from your users' devices is a never-ending struggle, but it will be worthwhile knowing your hybrid workers can continue to safely operate. One of the great IT certifications to attain is the Certified Information Security Specialist, or CISSP. This is a very difficult and expensive test, but having this certification does one thing above all others. It shows you not only how to secure a network, but you'll also know you're capable of testing the network to ensure your company's readiness. When I took this test many years ago, I was amazed that you had to wait years for the ISC² team to come into your area in order to take the test. They even still use number 2 pencils and Scantrons to grade them. They had multiple versions of the test, so no two people sitting next to each other could copy or cheat. You also had to wait weeks to find out if you passed. Now it's all electronic and you can take it at any testing center, but it goes to show the level of paranoia some people have about security. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Testing your network before an outbreak of malware or a physical emergency like an earthquake can mean all the difference between panic and calm resolve during a crisis. You'll need to create 2 teams: an incident response team and an emergency response team. The incident response team would deal with malware, ransomware, and other data-driven incidents. It would even cover some physical aspects, such as access card violations to secure rooms and reviewing video and intrusion detection logs. Your emergency response team will deal with earthquakes, floods, power outages, or anything else that could create an emergency situation for you and the staff. For hybrid workers, this means a lot of preparation is needed. For an incident, you would want a point of contact, such as a group that the user can call, text, email, or video conference in case they suspect they have been compromised. The incident team would need to act quickly to keep infections from spreading or allowing sensitive data to leave the computing device. The emergency response team will need to assist with how to handle things like natural disasters or electrical and internet outages for the remote users as well as those on premises. Do you have a hot site to go to, such as a data center with workstations at the ready? Do you tell the staff where to work once they are no longer in danger? Do you have backup internet connections and hotel options for those who lose power and internet? Every organization is going to respond differently because everyone has different needs and service level agreements with their clients. Next, you need to stage those emergencies as though they are happening and test your staff's knowledge and resolve during a crisis. We can't be prepared for every contingency, but we can prepare for the most likely scenarios where a crisis could happen. In my experience, the three biggest issues you'll have supporting hybrid users will be printing, DNS name resolution, and conference calling. After 20 years of VPN experience, VPN is not likely to be much of an issue once the user has successfully connected the first time. It should work the same way every subsequent time going forward. Printing, however, will be a constant battle for hybrid users. When a user moves from place to place, they forget that their default printer needs to change. They could end up printing sensitive information to the wrong location. They may also have constant printing problems if they use a remote desktop or Citrix connection. The server must have the drivers for all local devices in order to print remotely, and they don't support network printing. They only support direct USB, serial, or parallel printing. You may get a network printer to work, but it isn't going to be supported. This becomes even more difficult with other operating systems, such as Macintosh, Linux desktop, or mobile devices. Name resolution is another issue that will constantly pop up. When you use VPN to connect to the office or a direct connection to a cloud service, resolving names to mapped drives can be a constant struggle, especially for overtaxed systems. You may have connectivity by IP address, but not necessarily by file share name, which is what we all use. Conference calling will also be an issue due to problems with network address translation, firewalls, and wireless. All home users should have a wired connection to their computer when doing a conference call. Otherwise, you can expect a jittery video call with poor audio in many cases. I could say that wireless is a big issue on its own, but I don't recommend remote home workers even use it due to security concerns such as man-in-the-middle attacks, where data can be stolen by hackers within your vicinity. It is less secure in congested areas, slower, and more unreliable than wired. Network address translation, or NAT, can cause many VoIP issues because the SIP phone connection doesn't work well using NAT. Consider setting up the home user with IP version 6 instead. This version doesn't use NAT, and the calls will come through with all those issues resolved. Consider setting up a mock home office with a separate ISP connection in your company's location. Test all that your users will do from that office, including VPN, remote desktops, printing, video calls, and more. You'll soon see how to fix those issues and keep them from happening when setting up a remote worker for actual production. One of the struggles for hybrid workers is how to get application and operating system updates out to users when they're working remotely. Group policies and Windows software update servers just don't work well in that fashion. Update files can be so large that emailing the executables can be difficult and cause security issues. Microsoft has a few options. Windows Autopilot can assist new computer users by using this cloud service to tell computers what needs to be installed ahead of time. The way it works is that the administrator registers the hardware ID and pushes the needed software up to the cloud. The user obtains the new computer in shipping, logs in, and all that needed software gets pushed down to the computer from the cloud service, and the user is ready to connect. After that, you can use the same type of software push using Microsoft Intune and Endpoint Manager. Intune software push and approval also works for mobile devices using Android, Apple iOS, and Macintosh. For on-site and VPN users, you can do the same type of push using an on-premises product called System Center Configuration Manager. Users can receive operating system updates, software installations, and software updates from all different vendors. Another option would be to create a secure website or secure FTP using encryption and certificates that uses Radius or another type of authentication to log in. Once connected, the user can download and install any approved updates. This does require additional training, however, because the user will need to know what to do with the updates once they're downloaded. A secure hash also needs to be compared to ensure the download matches the expected software. A third-party option that organizations use is the software push capabilities from either anti-malware programs such as Kaspersky Endpoint Security or computer management programs provided by Kaseya or ConnectWise. This has the added benefit of being able to remote into the computers and then installing the updates for the user. These options can be more manual and expensive than the Microsoft options, but they're easy to set up and can keep users up to date. Whatever you decide to use to push out applications and updates, be sure it's a secure option. There are many different security standards such as HIPAA, SOX, NIST, FIPS, and others. Each vendor will provide what industry standards they comply with, that may apply to your organization. Wi-Fi can be a challenge for IT administrators and has been since we all first started using this technology. Wireless can be slow, unreliable, and have security issues. If you have the option, I strongly suggest you deny home users from using Wi-Fi. It will cut down on your security risks and phone calls about unreliable connections. However, if you must use wireless, then you should follow some industry standards. One of the first things to consider is using the latest Wi-Fi technology, such as 802.11ax or AC. They provide superior speed and reliability. You may need boosters throughout a user's home as they travel between rooms and floors. The second is to use the best authentication and encryption. In an office, this means using Radius to Active Directory Enterprise authentication. It ties the user's AD credentials to log in, so there's no shared passwords. At home, however, this just isn't possible. Make sure you use AES encryption and a long WPA2 password. Staff shouldn't use the same Wi-Fi network as the rest of the family or friends. Instead, provide the home staff worker with a Wi-Fi system that offers guest access. Everyone except the employee should use the guest SSID, which puts them on a different network that won't cross over to the staff's network. This type of access point is very common, but can be tricky to set up by a user. Pro home installation would be the way to go. At the corporate office, you can use VLANs to separate the networks using high-end switches to protect the production network from the wireless guest network. A central management system for enterprise users is essential for control and for intrusion detection. You could consider using a vendor-managed system, such as the one from Meraki by Cisco. The support is very good, but it is expensive. And if you're late paying the bill, they just shut off the wireless. The vendor can control your wireless setup remotely and can fix most issues without a site visit. Allowing a vendor this type of control, however, may be a security risk, so be sure to weigh the risk and costs against a traditional deployment. Although Wi-Fi is not recommended at home or the office due to security and reliability issues, it is a train that cannot be stopped. The best we can do is to mitigate costs and risks. Staff have many options when communicating with each other. Some offer more privacy than others. Sending email to another employee is typically considered safe, especially if using a closed email system like Microsoft Exchange. It becomes a bit more of a security risk if you're sending sensitive data outside your internal email system. There's the chance of it being intercepted at multiple points along the way and at the final destination. You can mitigate this by installing an encryption program on both sides, such as PGP. The users send each other keys, which are then used for encryption and decryption, but they have to be on both the sender and receiver's computer. Web encrypted documents have been gaining a lot of traction in the past few years. You send a link to a user that signs them into a secure website, such as the one at DocuSign. After confirming your identity, the user is able to see the document and sign it electronically. Texting is inherently insecure. The SMS protocol has been vulnerable for years due to a lack of encryption and SIM card cloning to see all the text coming and going. The only mitigation technique for this is to use encrypted conferencing programs like Microsoft Teams or WebEx for chatting, voice, video, and file transfer interactions. There are mobile and desktop versions that sync up with each other to send and receive securely. Cell phone calls are not well protected either. Anyone sitting on a hill can point a listening device at passing by cars and pick up their conversation. To counteract this, you can use a newer technology called VoBP, or Voice over Blockchain Protocol. Both the sender and receiver on a call will need to use the phone to be completely protected. Bluetooth has become less secure over the years. Earlier versions required complex passwords, but it caused so many pairing issues between devices that they no longer require it. There is a way to set some Bluetooth devices into hidden mode rather than discoverable mode, but beyond that, there's not much security you can count on using Bluetooth. There are many ways to communicate, but not a lot of ways to stay secure in those communications. Using the right medium for communication based on the level of security needed will go a long way to keeping your communications safe. There are many ways for employees to communicate. Traditionally, we have had phones, cell phones, VoIP phones, emails, instant messaging, and text. But I want to focus on the newer technology of application communication. Applications like Microsoft Teams and Zoom can do what all the traditional applications can do, but in one program. There are many others out there, but these two have the majority of the market, so I'll just focus on them. Zoom is a much newer application and has come on strong in the education space. It has a free option that has limitations on time and a paid version that doesn't. Zoom is fairly simple, but has had a lot of issues with security. Zoom bombing has become a new term we're getting familiar with because uninvited guests can log in and present content that would not be appropriate for a business meeting or school lecture. Even though Zoom has tightened up their security to a degree, it still has issues that make it inappropriate for most businesses. Teams have come a long way. It started as Skype by another company many years ago. It was purchased by Microsoft and renamed Skype for Business, and now rebranded once again as Teams. Teams is part of the Office 365 cloud suite of products and can be licensed with a subscription. The advantage for Teams over Zoom for security and functionality is like night and day. There are dozens of applications supported by Teams, such as Word, Excel, and Outlook email, but also many other third-party applications like Box, Ignite, ShareFile, and Google Drive, among others. These can be linked directly into Teams and used to collaborate with others no matter where they work. Applications can be approved or denied by the admin. The admin can also put limits on who can join a team or be a guest, who you can call, what features can be used, and Active Directory integration. There's no chance a Zoom bomber type of person could ever join a team with this type of control. In general, you should look for a communication application that can do the following: make calls, both audio and video, share files, chat used like text, has a mobile version, has good security and reliability, and is fairly priced. Other products that may fit your needs with most of these criteria would be Slack, WebEx, GoToMeeting, Google Meet, and Blackboard. Communication is key to productivity, but keep in mind the security you may need to comply with laws for your vertical market. Mobile devices make an ever-growing number of network devices in our corporate networks. The problem is that they aren't managed the same way that Windows or Macintosh computers are managed. They have lightweight operating systems and apps that are downloaded through their respective stores. Security is a huge part of the problem when introducing mobile devices. Some users alter their phones by jailbreaking them. This allows them to install apps from unapproved stores that can add even more risk for infecting their devices and the network. Infected apps from approved stores is also rampant, so we need to find a solution to the issue of security before we work on the problem of functionality. The first step will be to make the decision as to whether you'll allow users to bring their own device or provide one for them. BYOD, or bring your own device, saves the company money on purchases, repairs, and replacements, but there are other costs to consider. Is it a privacy violation to require your staff's mobile devices to be controlled by the company? In some cases, it would be. If you provide the devices for them, you have to consider the overall cost and the pain of staff carrying around two phones, one for business and one for personal. That won't be popular either. One possible solution is to use a product called Microsoft Endpoint Manager. You can allow staff to bring their own mobile devices, but the IT staff can manage those devices by taking control of just the business portion of the device. It creates a firewall between the two. If the personal side of the phone becomes infected, there's a firewall between the personal and corporate side that protects the corporate network. This should allow your organization to have the best of both worlds of security and privacy. There's another issue of compensation. If a user has corporate email on their phone, are they being compensated for answering emails, texts, and calls outside of business hours? Every state has its own rules on this, so be sure to check with your state. Mobile devices such as cell phones, tablets, Bluetooth add-ons, and more have lots of potential to make employees more productive, but also add risks and hidden costs of which we should all be aware. Ever since Cisco came out with the term Internet of Things about a decade ago, we have been wondering what this is going to look like. It is slowly taking shape and gathering steam. Basically, IoT is any electronic device that could potentially connect to the internet. That includes TVs, smart speakers, and light bulbs, but also fans, microwaves, dishwashers, washing machines, and anything that may be electric. For some people, having these devices online is adding entertainment, such as video and audio, but for others, it's much more. If your coffee maker needs to be fixed, it's likely the repair shop will know it before you do. That's because the coffee maker will send out a signal that there's a problem and it needs to be fixed. It may even tell the repair company what parts to bring. That could save your entire freezer from losing food or your wash from going sour. It could speed up repairs on your copiers and order toner before you even run out. There's multiple issues with the Internet of Things devices. The first is the version of IP addressing. As of now, most of us use IPv4 internally to our organization. To hide our internal IPs, we use network address translation. IoT devices need two-way communication, which may require IPv6, which doesn't rely on NAT. It relies on newer and better security to protect your network that is far more functional. This may require you to change your network to accommodate the needs of the devices to work as designed. The second issue is much bigger, and that is security. The designers of IoT devices are typically not security experts. There's already been a tremendous amount of breaches into things like IP cameras and IP phone systems due to poor security. Since they use a simple Linux operating system, it's no problem for the hackers to create a shell into the network where the hacking can begin. Therefore, we need to not only secure the devices by limiting their network access, but also lock down their IP addresses using access control lists to not be able to reverse shell out to the network or perform other nefarious acts like implanting malware. According to Kaspersky Labs, there are some things that can be done to protect your network from IoT devices wreaking havoc. Deploy end-to-end encryption. Make sure the device and software updates are available and install them on time. Keep track of device available features and disable the unused features. Require strong login credentials. Organizations are making IoT a priority, so you'll need to make sure the devices are ready to be on your network without worrying about them taking over. Thank you for joining me in our course on hybrid security. This video series taught the concepts of a hybrid workforce and how to support employees who work in one. We discussed the different types of workforces and their risks in today's corporate climate. We talked about the do's and don'ts of creating a security plan for your organization and the different ways a user can connect to their remote data and the types of VPNs that would work in specific scenarios. You may have wondered when the best time was for you to go to the cloud. This was also discussed along with pricing based on organization size and controls of cloud versus on-premises data solutions. Keeping out malware and securing your users and their data was also a top priority of this course, along with testing security to make sure your solution works properly. If you would like to see more courses on protecting data and remote users, please check out my course, Sysadmin Backup and Recovery, and Common Work from Home Troubleshooting for IT Admins. Thank you again for joining me, and I look forward to presenting additional courses for you in the near future.